Vampire Hunters is a first-person auto-shooter roguelike developed by Gamecraft Studios, released in 2024. It basically asks, what if we made Vampire Survivors into an FPS? Would that work? I'm going to say yes. Yes, it does. You get to play as a few characters as they try to survive against a shit ton of monsters with the end goal of killing Dracula. That's it for the plot. It's basically non-existent. There's no lore to find, no cutscenes telling you what's going on, just monster killing fun. So what is the game like to play? It's really fun and tickled my monkey brain. There are two modes. The first one is Survivor mode. This is heavily inspired by Vampire Survivors. You'll start in a variety of areas with the goal of surviving to 30 minutes. You have to fight an endless horde of monsters that are constantly moving towards you. You'll start with one weapon, and after killing a few enemies, they'll drop souls that are used to level up. Once you level up, you get a pick from 4 options, which can be guns, magic, passive abilities, or upgrades. As the game goes on, the enemies get harder and harder to kill, which means it gets harder to level up, so the strategy is to kill as many as you can before they get tougher. When picking what to get when you level up, you want to balance keeping your damage up and picking upgrades to keep your health up. If you pick too many damage upgrades, you won't have enough health to survive, but if you focus on defense too much, you're not going to have the damage output to kill the monsters and bosses. It's a nice little gameplay loop with a bit of strategy needed if you want to live. You get a large selection of guns in this game, from revolvers, flamethrowers, cannons, and crossbows, which is great as you can hold up to 10 guns at a time. You can have 2 magic weapons at a time, which are stuff like an exploding frog, which does poison damage, or something that gives you a buff. You can also hold 2 secondary weapons. These will be like bats, swords, and whips. So overall, you can hold 14 weapons at a time. You'll have to mix and match the weapons to suit your playstyle. I found that having a variety works best, as only having, say, machine guns is great for damage, but not the best for crowd control. The roguelike elements, having a lot of random weapons you can pick from, will force you to adapt, which I love. When you level up, one of the options will normally be to upgrade one of your current weapons, making it better, or to pick a new one which doesn't do much damage. I like this, how you're going to have to think what to do. Is it better to level your rifle, making it high damage, but not being good for crowd controls, or should you pick a weaker cannon and focus on leveling that up so you can deal with crowds later? All the weapons have strengths and weaknesses, which is why it's best to mix and match and pray to the RNG gods you get a weapon you're hoping for. The best way to play, I found, is to always be moving, but some areas have choke points where enemies single file come towards you, meaning you can just stand there and take out lots of enemies. This game has a way of making you move though. Souls are drops where a monster dies, meaning you're gonna have to move towards them to pick them up. This can be dangerous as another monster is probably gonna be stood on top of it by the time you get there. This is why you need to keep your damage high. Also, every few minutes a chest will spawn in a random location, giving you a free upgrade or gun. This chest will disappear after a minute or so, so it'll force you to move. One health potion can appear at a time in designated spots. These are the only way you can heal if you haven't picked any health upgrade options. Bosses will spawn every few minutes as well, as there are a variety of them, and they will become your focus when they spawn. Each boss has their own gimmick, like one runs around placing buff totems around the area, another leaves a slime trail which can drastically slow you down, and one is just straight up the rock from the Scorpion King. So it's better to try and take these out right away, as you'll have an easier time and they will drop upgrades when defeated. At the start of the map, only one boss will spawn at a time, but as the game starts to spawn, 4 or 6 bosses will spawn at the same time, which can easily overwhelm you if you're not prepared. The roguelike elements come in where between missions you can buy permanent upgrades for all your characters, like increasing your damage or max health. Each of the 5 playable characters has their own unique abilities they can use, like the scout has dash and the paladin has stomp. They also have their own skill tree, leading to each character having their own pros and cons. This means you're going to have to change up how you play depending on which character you pick at the start. That's the first mode. The second mode is classic. I'm not a big fan of this mode. It's the same gameplay as Survivor, but you're in a long hallway instead. Your goal is to get to the end of the hallway and fight a boss to finish the level. You get gold in this mode, which is used to buy weapons when you level up. I found this mode a lot harder than the other mode, and it's just not as fun as the other mode. This game has a retro art style which is pleasant to look at. I could tell the different monsters apart even when in the action, which is great as different enemies require different tactics to take down, so it's nice to have different designs to stand out from each other at a glance. Now let's rank it. I found this game really fun and replayable. I would literally start the game blink and 8 hours have gone by. It's a great gameplay loop and a fun amount of strategy. I can see myself coming back to this every so often. I would have liked a story of some sort added to the game. I also feel like you've seen everything in this game after the first few hours, so this is going to be a tough one for me to place. I think I'm going to place it at number 3 purely based on its fun factor. If it had a good story or maybe I had a bit more variety in its gameplay, I would put it higher. That's it, so long.